Taking care of business. I've been looking forward to taping this for a really long time. So if you're tuning in for this episode, I really appreciate it. You maybe have heard the phrase, Agile is dead. You see organizations doing this whole, what's the next step? What's next for Agile? Reimagining agility, all this stuff. And that phrase, Agile is dead, you'll hear that from a lot of people and like, what's next for them? And I find it really interesting because when people ask me, they say, hey, is Agile dead? I say, no, Agile's not dead. But part of it is. Agile isn't dead, but the business of it is. Think about that. Agile isn't dead, but the business of it is. When I say the business of it, I think about the exchange of money around the products, the services, the tools, the conferences, just the whole ecosystem where agility is the product, the business of Agile. I think that that's dead. Some people are like, it's still alive. I was like, it's not kicking. It's not healthy. And, if you're somebody who used to make your living around agility, you currently are, you're planning to, or you hope to, this episode probably is for you. And thinking about the organizations that say, oh, agility, it's not even just a thing. It's just baked into what we do. It's just, we already are Agile. A lot of times they couldn't be more off. Like couldn't be further from the truth. I recently did a talk at a conference called The Myth of the Mature Agile Organization. You can actually check it out on the channel if you want. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is that organizations that really wanted to take the step into agility and how they deliver value, how they build products, how they just work, they think that they've checked the box and really their Agile transformation, they thought that they completed it when really they hadn't even started it. The underlying values and principles around this entire movement that you'll see at the manifesto, these are things that really inform our behaviors, our decisions, and our interactions. And when you think about what some of these say, individuals and interactions over processes and tools, you'll see that. You kind of think about, are we really people first? And when I say the business of Agile is dead, think about those processes and tools that you run into. It's like, there's a lot of that. And just... it bums me out just having been here for the entire arc of all of this and to have the context and the history with this. I wanted to tape this episode to just give you a couple of ideas from my experience, from what I've seen. So I want to give a bit of a disclaimer. This is my experience and what I've seen in the Agile industry across the last almost 20 years or so. Your entry into the universe of Agile and how all the business works may have been different from mine, and it might have been more positive, more negative, whatever it might be. I can share with you my viewpoint, and that's why I was really looking forward to taping this episode. I've had conversations with product companies, with people who offer certifications, when I'm like, hey, it used to be like this, a little bit of a history lesson, some storytelling. People couldn't be more shocked. I'm like, hey, it actually used to look like this. And I think that some of these stories put together in this context around the services, the tools, the conferences, the certifications, all of that kind of gives a lot of clarity as far as what we're dealing with right now. So I want to get that out of the way and make sure that you hear from me that I'm not saying that this is the right thing, the wrong thing. A lot of times this is just what happened, and I've got the receipts. So you want to reach out, talk with me. Hey, I heard more about this. Could you tell me more? Just send me a note, send me a DM, send me an email. If you want to have a further conversation, no problem on that. But back to business, pun intended, the business of Agile, I think, is dead. And I want to go ahead and share some thoughts, some ideas, some context about kind of not just where we are, but I want to talk about like where we were, like how good it was. I think about how exciting some of these things were, about how there's just a better energy around things. There was a curiosity, and seeing that curiosity, that desire that I want to learn, I want to get better, I want to try to move the needle, and just the conversations that were happening. It was a different time, and it was really fun to be a part of it. And I've been thinking about doing a bit on nostalgia. And a friend of mine was talking when I was telling them about this episode. It was, are you going to get nostalgic? I was like, not so much. But we were talking about that word nostalgia and FOMO, fear of missing out. And it's not that people get nostalgic or FOMO. It's you almost miss the good parts about, the good old days, glory days. He was walking in, I was walking out. The good old days is what sticks with you, and also the bad parts too. But thinking about kind of what something once was and that longing for it, you're almost mourning what it used to be. And regardless if you made money on this or not, this entire movement had a lot of ebbs and flows, a lot of interesting parts. And from my part of the journey, my own personal journey, and around the organizations I've worked with, the organizations I've started off, what's ahead, that's a part of it. So I'd like to start by talking about one part of the business of Agile that I think has really, really taken a hit, and that's around services. And again, back to the values and the principles. When I think about organizations that say, oh, we're looking for, an Agile transformation, the product that you were trying to actually sell, the package was, we've got the Agile. I have a friend of mine I talk about, oh, we got to do that Agile. We're doing the Agile. And it's like, ugh. There were individuals, there were organizations, small, medium, large. The whole point was selling Agile, like an Agile transformation or helping to move you along the Agile, maturity, all this stuff. And this included assessments where people would go in and have people do surveys or fill out things or do interviews. There were workshops, there was placements. There were entire organizations that would try to find portions of what they would call, the Agile development process. I'm going to do quotes a lot in this one, by the way. Hi, we have an entire group of Agile-friendly testers that you could plug in, and then you can have a Scrum team full of testers, and we'll work in sprints, and that completely misses the point of the whole cross-functionality piece of it. I'll get to more about that later. But imagine if your business is about placing people with specialized skills to kind of plug in. There was a lot of money to be made. I'm going to be honest with you. There were whole shops, like sole proprietorships or groups of people where it was about placement of professionals on teams throughout organizations, the placement of Agile coaches. I'm not going to be dunking on y'all too much on this one, but this is definitely a part of it. Because what would happen is you would place this person as an Agile coach. And from my background as a professional coach, executive and leadership coaching, the lines around that and what an Agile coach brings, folks, I love you, but so much of the problems that we're dealing with right now are a self-inflicted wound. There was a lot of good, don't get me wrong. People were curious about things, they were learning things, and a lot of folks who went into these organizations that wanted to learn about it, that were curious, some good stuff happened. And from a training standpoint, that is a whole thing. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in certification, but this was part of it as well. People were selling, oh, we'll do a workshop, we'll do a class. Agile fundamentals, Agile in a day. You ever heard that one? People were selling these, and they still do, for good money. And you go to LinkedIn. Anybody interested in selling our version of the Agile fundamentals? You're going to use my deck, answer some questions, call it a day. You can make big margin on that. You find a local coach to go in, do some hey, fight with that system administrator. Yeah, I'm just curious. Literally, the same back and forth is happening in these workshops that did 15 plus years ago. And that really bums me out when you think about it, where it's like we're still fighting into some of the same things, or some of those conversations look different. People used to sell implementation plans. We're going to come on in as a consulting agency to take a holistic view of how you deliver value or how you create software or reduce costs, whatever it is. And then you'd come up with this deck and here's a plan and we'll do this. And what we'll do is we'll do a full arching assessment of your organization and take a look. We'll interview some people. Maybe we'll suggest some organizational structure changes. We'll do some training specifically on this. We'll find people from the business. Let them learn how to this. We'll find your development personnel. As a part of this larger engagement of an implementation plans, it was a mixture of, hours. You're selling, this idea, but also the people and the licenses and such. And I'm going to tell you a little dirty secret about a lot of this stuff. I was part of a team that was working on a data center migration. And there was a lot of physical hardware, a lot of configuration, different tech stacks and choosing. And there was an individual that we were working with that when you'd go into these meetings, you ever met somebody that would just drag the meeting out, ask questions until we ran out the clock, didn't get anything done in the meeting, and you have to do it all again today, and they don't mind? The reason why is that individual was paid on an hourly basis. And you want to know what? The more difficult I can make it for you, the longer these meetings are going to go, which means the more I can bill you for. So here's the dirty little secret. those transformations that were really tough, that were really long, once that deal is sold, regardless how the contract is written, if it was time and materials or firm fixed price, if you're going to fight these people on this, hey, we're trying to do this, we're trying to run it, the meter is running. People are going to try this whole Agile thing out. And if they meet personnel that aren't up to snuff, hard to deal with, they're not seeing the results that they want from a culture standpoint, from a communication standpoint, from a value delivery standpoint, from an optimization standpoint, from a cost saving standpoint. If I'm spending money and not getting anything and just going into getting a whole bunch of PowerPoint decks and fighting meetings, why would I want to do this again? Full disclosure, people were making a lot of money on this. And I think there was a real big value disconnect for a lot of this. When you're selling, here's the checklist, here's the recipe. If you follow these things, you will become agile. You claim that you really want to have this culture shift when really you don't. You really just want the former. You just want the recipe, just follow the checklist. There are entire companies, small, medium, even large organizations, and they were founded on this whole portfolio of different offerings to support this idea of a transformation. This could be anything from workshops, training classes, assessments, agile coaching services, implementation plans, tool installation, implementation, and administration. More on that later. There's a ton of money to be had. And with that, there were a lot of jobs to be had as well. There were job opportunities to get work, to get placed, and to think about that. Back to the business of Agile. If you're looking for a job and you're like, hey, I can do this thing. It's like, hey, we have an opportunity to go into this agency or this company. By the way, this is public sector and private sector. It's all over. And to date, a lot of this, you saw this big groundswell of this, from around, call it, 2010 to 2015, there was this big uptick in this. It was almost bad to be called, oh, you're not doing that Agile. And so people wanted to move that, and then job opportunities started to expand. People were recompeting contracts saying, yes, you have an incumbent working this way, traditional bad, Agile good. I come from the world of traditional project and program management. There's a lot of good there, but unfortunately there's a lot of baggage with that. And we're kind of seeing the pendulum swing back the other way. But in that sweet spot of, hey, we want to try this Agile thing, think about how many jobs you would see from people work, from technical work, from graphic design to conversations, presentations. And what would happen is organizations started to come up with their own way to do things. The proprietary Agile methodology. You ever heard that before? This drives me nuts. Whenever I'm teaching with people and they say, oh, we do that Agile. It's like the Agile process, the Agile methodology. And for a lot of people, you know what agility is? Bad Scrum. Totally frustrating. I had someone that met me once and they're like, Chris, we don't have Scrum Masters. We have Agile Project Accelerators. We don't have sprints. We have cycle spins. And they had a different word for everything. And I'm really big on shared understanding. And I'll tell you this right now, if you're saying tomato and somebody else says tomato, there's a good chance you might be on the same page. But if you say cheeseburger and somebody else says birthday cake, you're probably in different zip codes. And meeting folks who would argue these semantics, these pedantry, it's only part of a bigger problem because they're coming from a completely different school of thought sometimes. A lot of times it's people wanted to win. Like, hey, I want my idea to win out. So if organizations let's come up with our own version of this, this is how we do it. We found what works for us. Some people would buy it. Hey, I want to buy that. You were awesome at this, or here's your case study. Let's try it out. And when they would hire these people, they would try to go through this and they might not make the environmental changes they needed. They might not look at the type of people they hired, the tools, the contracts, the type of work, their value system. They would try it out and say, nope, this isn't for me. And they would say, I'm never going to try Agile again. And I have a lot of close friends that used to say, I love the bad Agile implementations because people will then say, I want to try something else. It was bad with this company. Well, we want to give you a shot. That second shot never really happens. If a frame of reference, if you tried some food once and you thought it was something, you might never want to try a second bite. I mean, it's imagine if you're like, I hate pizza. Now I love pizza. It's I hate New York pizza. It's awful. I had New York pizza. It's awful. And their only reference is a slice that was left cheese down in a puddle on the sidewalk. They, for some reason, took a bite and said, this tastes awful. Of course it does. But that's their frame of reference. If they think that's what all pizza is, they're not going to want pizza. People thought, oh, I'm going to make better pizza than sidewalk pizza. Try my pizza. Be like, I don't want any of that. Nope. So it's like, why? Why are we here on this? When you have organizations who are making up their own certs, and certs, by the way, they were like gangbusters. Like there's the whole Agile industrial complex of training and certification. I'll talk about this later on. The thing is that people would go to these different classes and learn different things, and they would pick and choose what was comfortable and what they liked. And they're like, oh, we can do everything we want, right? It's Agile. Well, if you find something that works for you, suddenly you're trying to sell that. And it's funny how I had friends who would like, the hill they would die on, the sword they would fall on was this checklist that was found somewhere on the internet. And meanwhile, someone's like, let's try to shift the needle on this. And you would correct somebody on terminology or definitions, and they would fight you on it. The thing is it goes deeper normally. When I see that stuff, those are actually normally bigger fights than you realize. A lot of times it's a clash with value systems. I had an organization reach out to me once, and this is a couple of years ago. Might have been pre-COVID. And they said, Chris, we want you to come in and do one of your certified classes. I was like, oh, I would have a conversation about that. They actually put it out to the world and said, we need somebody with one of your licenses to come in and certify people with this. However, we want you to change your class to say that these practices are standard and that these are the correct way to do it. And it like directly contradicted what was in the class. And it's not just my call. It was around the educational objectives that the course was certified in, where a certifying authority was saying, okay, if we trust you, the trainer, to make sure people know what's right from left, and this particular organization wanted me to change that. It's like, no, like, get out of here. Somebody else probably took that work. Good for them. It's not me. But this is, again, indicative of the problem of people were selling things and trying to package it as their own with their own little tweak. And if somebody tried that out and it didn't exactly work for them, or they had a bad experience, they're going to tell other people. The people who are doing their best, what they thought was right, and everyone does what they think is right, the good gets lumped in with the bad. You might have an organization with a really strong moral compass, good business ethics, an agile value system that would marry my own. I would say that I have a pretty strong root in these values and principles, strong sense of right and wrong, that kind of stuff. The thing is, the good gets lumped in with the bad. And if someone didn't like it, well, off we go. I was at an event that was not a part of the Agile ecosystem, but actually in learning and development, L&D. And it's funny because the Agile stuff, doing that Agile, is starting to make its way into there. And I had a conversation with a colleague of mine, and they couldn't have been more condescending and flippant about it. They're like, the Agile stuff, oh, that's awful. Let me tell you how we really can do it, because this is what Agile is. And it was funny because during the conversation, what they were experiencing was this remix mashup of bad practices with a different paint job of what they thought it was. And I want you to imagine just the most thrown together version of popular scaling frameworks, other team-centric things, and really misunderstood concepts all mashed together in this awful casserole. Like, you know, the potluck casserole that you don't want to eat, everything, anyone takes a bite and puts it in the trash face down. That's what this one person confidently thought agility was. And when I started to disprove some of it, let me show you this. No, it's actually supposed to be this. This is not how this is taught. It's supposed to look like this. Hey, in this meeting where people interacting like this, where was executive leadership? They're like, it didn't have any of that. They had hired some off the street person with a lot of letters after their name or on a recommendation or fit the price, and they were sold a bill of goods. And if that's your experience, I mean, that's just sidewalk pizza. And you're going to loudly proclaim that either A, you're an expert in it, or B, that it's terrible. You know what? You could be right. In my experience, this stuff is terrible. It's like you've never had real pizza. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating. Imagine selling transformations or workshops or engagements or putting people there. It's like if you meet someone and it's just, you ever met somebody and it's like they're a schmuck. You know they don't know what they're talking about. Not that you don't like the person. You can not like the person and respect them. You've seen the smart people. It's like, okay, strip the bias away. They probably know what they're talking about. If you meet a lot of people and they don't know what they're talking about and they're all under this one umbrella, this Agile group, you might not want it. So what's happening now? A lot of the job functions that we're seeing out there, they're kind of getting broken away and spread out. And I'm hearing a lot of people, between technical and product. Technical folks will handle this, product will do this. We don't really need the Agile people anymore. And too often, those practices they're trying to spread out, a lot of times it's built on a bad foundation. Really, like not rooted in the basics, not rooted in that Agile mindset, not rooted in these values and principles. And instead, it's just a bunch of nonsense. Additive processes with extra steps that slow everything down. No wonder people don't like this. I remember meeting, and this is earlier in my career, meeting a lot of people in the Northern Virginia area that were really excited about things. They're like, I'm really passionate about active server page technology. And we used to tell this joke because there was a tagline as a part of our sales capture in BD. We would have to pair it. And I'm going to paraphrase it, but it was along the lines of like, we're trying to enable active server page technology to allow organizations to modernize for a click and mortar world, e-business solutions to bring, and just every buzzword you can think of. How ridiculous does that sound? Those same people, they wear a different face. Sometimes it's the same face. These are the people who are really passionate about AI. Sorry, I said it. It's the same thing. People see something, they get excited about it. It's like, are you really passionate about it? The same thing happened with Agile. Oh, I see this thing. I'm really excited about it. So it's like, where are we now? All these services, these jobs, these gigs, these contracts. Right now, those contracts for Agile services, those are on the decline. Go and look and see what's posted, finding Agile transformation work. We are looking for testing services on anybody who's trying to make money in that part of the business. You might have a contract that's like being recompeted. You might have like an anchor where it's a friend of yours that you started different companies where you used to be coworkers. Even those one-offs of, hey, we're trying to get a coach work here. There's a good chance that word Agile doesn't show up in there anymore. Some of the job functions may look the same, or it's just some version, again, bad Scrum. But a lot of those contracts are on the decline. And if they're out there, they're not paying what they once were. The job postings, those are dwindling. The fact that entire departments were laid off from big organizations. I did a podcast interview on this a couple of years ago, and it was right after that big swath of layoffs. And if you were impacted by that, I hope you found a new home, a better home by now. But you have entire departments of being laid off. Anybody in the Agile Center of Excellence or in the Agile delivery, whatever, everyone on the street. And I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of really good people out there looking for jobs. And the fact that when I hear about these interview processes that take so long from technical folks, non-technical folks, and it's like, how many weeks of what? How many rounds of what? They chose the Pope in 2 days. You can find someone. Like, come on. But the job postings, those are like really dwindling. And the ones that are posted that I see up, you can tell it's like a real like late to the game organization. Because when you drill down and you start looking into what's your job functions, it's nothing about development of people, growth in the organization, trying to be thought leaders. It's literally just tool administration, report generation, and tapping people on the shoulder saying, where's your ticket? Tickets, issues. I just hate saying those words. Tickets and issues, bugs. Ticket shop. I've talked about this before and some other things. If that's the type of work you want, cool. There is nothing that would get me out of bed in the morning more than getting to close tickets all day, gonna respond to Sev 1 tickets all day. Sounds awful. Anyway, back to it though. The job postings themselves, people would be like, I'm an Agile coach, or I'm a project manager that's Agile friendly, or I'm a facilitator that helps improve communication, or I'm a pipeline specialist. Some of those jobs are kind of out there. They've been rescoped, or they've been moved further down. And that's indicative that, yeah, the business part of this is dead. There are small businesses that used to be built on placing people like, oh, I'll give you 1, 2, or 3 Agile coaches, or we can provide product type support, or, oh, there's this. They might have offered like packages, like I said before, like, oh, we have testing services available, or this, or we can teach workshops or train your staff. A lot of those small businesses, they've either shifted away from that or they're gone. I've seen a lot of rebrands lately. seen a lot of like, hey, it used to be called this, now we're called that. And some of you might be saying, well, Chris, what about Sparkplug? If you would have seen my previous podcast, the coming out party of this new organization, Sparkplug's still around. I'm still an Agilist at heart. And if people want to call for some of that, I definitely want to have that conversation. But to be honest, I have to think about what gets me excited, what I'm passionate about, where I want to spend my time. And right now, if I'm watching, this struggle, this market, and not even just the market, the people in it, it's like, I don't want to be a part of that. It doesn't fill my cup. So there's still work out there. And if you're still trying to be like, hey, I still want to work in this, I still believe it, I do too. But that's the only option you have. Try to look past the title. Like when you see a job posting, some people just stop at the title. Get down into the job functions of what your day-to-day look like. Think about what industry that group is in or that organization. Think about the missions they're trying to serve and see what it is. A lot of the gigs out there that say, oh, this is like an Agile type, even if they use that word now, once you dig into it, a lot of times it's just this homebrew version of misinterpreted best practices. It's not at all what it used to look like. There's organizations that will gladly package that. They gladly sell it. And you want to know what? The people that are buying that, normally that organization is far too gone, just too far gone. They're in another place. And if they're excited about taking that step, I'm like, huh? Yeah. So it's kind of a bummer just talking about this. And when I was thinking about writing this episode and what I was going to talk about, I want to shine a light on it, call it what it is, and give you some things to think about what to do. There's a lot of people still fighting the good fight. A lot of people still trying to move the needle. And if you're one of those people, you think you're one of those people, that's awesome. Keep at it. If you need help, call me. Chances are you don't think you need it. I'm going to talk more about that in a little bit. There's a lot of really smart people in the marketplace, though. So if you're out there hiring right now, you're trying to build a good team, there are just some of the most impressive personnel that I know, some of the hardest working people, detail-oriented, very, very organized, great people skills, great communication that want to try to help and try to make something happen. And they're having trouble getting work, which is just bonkers to me. If you're looking for someone good, send me a note. There's a good chance I know someone. Seriously, send me a note. But if you're still out there looking, keep at it. Keep at it. It's going to be fine. There's somebody out there that wants what you're selling. But if you're an organization that used to sell, the soup to nuts Agile transformation, you might want to think how many people are still calling for that. And if they are calling for it, what are they really looking for? When I think about kind of like my entry into the Agile industry and just the world, thinking about around 2007, 2008, when I first started hearing about it and wasn't excited about it, but I was curious. The people that I met, the drive was a little different. They were doing what they could to really move the needle, trying to enact change. And when they were doing this, the struggle was, hey, here's how I think about things, or here's how a small group of us think about things, but I don't have support from above. I don't have support from below, maybe a couple of peers. And I think about that, and it's almost like fighting the good fight, something you care about. I like those days, to be honest. I found something that I'm so frustrated in that I want to try something different. One thing I tell people, I was on some of those traditional programs where I handed over the binder of requirements that cost you, the taxpayer, $4 million or something like that. And not a line of code was written, maybe a couple mock-up screenshots and some specs. And it's like, here you go. And I'm like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to do this. And that's what drove a lot of people to it. Just frustration of not being able to move the needle, not trying to change things. And these people needed something to kind of help them. And I want to use that frame to talk about the next big topic. And that would be tools. And when I say tools, I want to define this not as practices. Because when I say, in my professional coaching circles, when people say, what kind of tools are out there, they really mean assessments. When I say assessments, I want you to think of Insights Discovery, DISC, Myers-Briggs. They're thinking software tool as an assessment versus here's a technique that may be a type of interaction that you could come up with or an exercise you could go through. In the terms of agility, when I say tools, I want you to think software tools. Back to my own value system and what I used to think about. When I think about agility, I think a lot of people working together in a collaborative manner. And I myself always tried to take a very lo-fi approach. What did that mean? I wanted stuff to be simple on the surface for people using the most lo-fi technology as I could. Think about it. Put some smart people in a room that are aligned around an idea, a problem. We're trying to work together to come up with a way to get out of this jam. Smart people around a table that have that kind of alignment with some sticky notes, some markers, some index cards, some blue tape. That's all we needed. And the problems I've seen solved, the ideas that would come up, the products that would be created, the good that was done. Sticky notes and index cards. That was it. For me, I always wanted to keep stuff simple. I wanted to worry about the people and how they would communicate with one another. Let's get through the BS and let's try to solve the problem. And so thinking back to individuals and interactions over processes and tools, remember that? Tools had value. Manifesto even says it. Everything here has value. It's just we would choose the item on the left over the item on the right. When it came to tooling, I remember early in the Agile industry, when people were getting involved to it, what the conversations were. And a lot of times it was people fighting with Excel and Word and how to deal with things. And straight up, how can you get this out of Microsoft Project? I was working with a bunch of great people. And we were in one environment inside a government agency. And they were going through modernization of some systems, consolidation, tech stack type stuff, running this program in an agile way. And I remember I got approached by leadership, one of high up in leadership, and said, Chris, here's my problem with this agile thing. I go here, I buy this book, and I see this other thing, I see this. I think you're all making it up. I think you're all saying different stuff. What do you, I want you to come on and talk to me about this. I said, sure, no problem. And I came on in and he was like, he even had laid out some books and some papers. He's like, well, this says this and this conflicts with this and this conflicts with this. And I can't really get behind this. What do you got to say about this? I go, well, if we're talking about this particular approach to planning, if you'll notice on page, I think it's around 84, 85 of that book, you'll notice that the author talks about this particular way of talking about some things. In that white paper, their examples cited with this, and there's this. I actually know the person that wrote that. I knew who the author was here. And of the three sources they put in front of me, I showed that, no, we're all saying the same thing rooted in this. And they're like, okay, Mr. Smarty Agile Pants, I get you. But let me ask you a question. How can I see how all this happens? And he was concerned that people were spending so much time on the different software elements of trying to make things happen and planning and being visible in planning. And he was like, I don't know when we're done. I have a trouble getting my head around this. And I said, sir, well, let me show you something. And I opened up one of the team's particular dashboards. And I'll tell you about what tool that is in a little bit. And I opened it up and I was like, well, so you see right here how there's this one outcome we're going for? And notice how there's like a bar, it's like a percentage complete. And notice how like if I click on this, it goes down and there's a couple smaller outcomes underneath it. I was like, oh, okay. Well, notice how if I get down here, here's a short range plan that people are making a couple of these outcomes happen. And when I move this here, this bar moves here. And I started demonstrating how as we would move these individual work items, that smaller outcome would eventually complete. And that one outcome was a part of a larger outcome. And you would see all these bars move. And it was like, oh, I really like this. Mr. Lee, this looks like a work breakdown structure. I said, sir, that's exactly what this is. It's a breakdown of work. We have an overarching goal, an initiative we're trying to make. We have some higher level initiatives, thinking about it in a quarterly standpoint. What are some major outcomes we're going for? Those have been decomposed into smaller pieces. These different pieces then are broken down with just-in-time planning, where here are the things that are happening. And as they accomplish, different things kind of roll up. It absolutely is a work breakdown structure. We're looking at work, breaking it down into smaller pieces. And we're not planning for the entire thing at once. Just in this one particular initiative, we'll look at this later. Of course, it's a work breakdown structure. It's not Microsoft Project. And he was like, Chris, why are we paying for double licenses? I said, I don't know. So that was the question I was going to ask you. He said, turn it off. I got Project turned off inside this agency. And I remember people were rejoicing, except some of my friends who were contemporaries who really liked their project plans. It just, same stuff, just looked a little bit different. That's all it was. And that tool that we were using replicated some of the activities that would happen on an Agile team as they would go through their short planning cycles, as they would get feedback, getting just enough down so that they had an idea what their plan would look like. And like, I think back to then, and this is when remote work was not there. Physical teams working together in one place with occasional remote stuff, everyone was together. And that meant you could have these things like a team room where here's where we're going to go for our collaborative sessions. And by the way, if you were working in a place where everyone advocated for an open floor plan, I'll tell you this right now, extrovert to introvert, everyone hated these. And when I see this and everyone's got, the do not disturb earphones on, it's just like, and that one person's got their phone out taking a speakerphone call. Absolute disaster. Again, not thinking about the people. Anyway. But back to the physical environment. When everyone's in one place and we're all there 5 days a week, imagine that. You could go into these rooms, you could put stuff up on the wall, you can visualize some things, you could move stuff around. Sticky notes, that was the key. People were like, what do you buy then? Sticky notes and markers. I mean, 3M, shout out to your products. By the way, if you're going to buy sticky notes, do not buy the cheap stuff. Get the super sticky ones. And if you're going to do it, pull from the side and not the bottom so you get that bad curl. Some people had some templates of here's what your wall could look like, but most of this was homegrown for their context. Like, here's what we look like. Let's visualize our work. And it's funny how a couple of different software tools were showing up around that. I remember back in the day when the question I would get was, Chris, what should we use? Should we use Rally? Should we use version 1? These were two of the big players in the market. And just a gleam in the eye, a couple of people would ask about Greenhopper. Chris, what's Greenhopper? Greenhopper was the plugin that was eventually absorbed into the wonderful Atlassian suite. Shout out to my friends there. You're a part of this problem too. The reason why I mention that is that this predates the whole Jira Agile thing. The virtual nature of queues and handoffs where one group did not have to talk to another, this is what the foundation was it all based on. And if you look at the early data models of those tools, they didn't use the word backlog item. They didn't use the word user story. It was all built on a word called issue. And you know where issues were? Tickets. Tickets. You heard people say tickets? Yeah. Just hearing it makes my blood boil. Anyway, but there was a couple of players that, hey, what could we use? There were some other tools like checklist tools, but there wasn't this desire of we need to have it in a virtual place. We need to create reports. It was, if you needed to see what was going on, you walk by the team room and saw that. If you had to ask a question, you'd ask a question. And it was like, what's really going on? Well, hey, we're trying to get feedback on this. Come back next week and we'll check it out. I remember when people say, hey, check this out. We made this for you. What do you think? My students remember me saying that a lot. Anytime you can ask people for feedback, just show it to them. Good stuff. I mean, back then, there were software teams that would utilize a bunch of different like development environments. And there would be like development environment here, like Dev 1 and Dev 2, or Dev Test Prod, Dev Test Demo Prod, Dev Test Demo Train Stage Prod. You had all these different environments. And if you were in the world like I was, where you had to maintain these environments and make sure stuff was patched right and move stuff from here to here and all of that, it was fun, keeping stuff in line. But there were tools to support those. How can we move this code base from one to another? How could we put in some automation to check some things and do some testing? These tools, and that's a whole episode in itself. But a lot of those tools, they were built to support the people trying to get that done. And there was always that angle of people. These were technical practices that just made sense. Like, hey, here's something we should do to write great software. And we're losing that art. The people who really cared about what they would craft, they're getting railroaded by someone just kludging some stuff together with a drag and drop. And I've seen enough of the arc from drag and drop, visual, early versions of Visual Basic selling, you don't have to code, to development environments where you drag and drop controls onto a web page, to ORM tools that you don't need a database administrator, to the modern thing of you don't even need to have a degree in software engineering to write code. Meanwhile, like the senior engineers that got to go clean that stuff up, they're in high demand because the work is cleanup, not creation. Can't stand it. Back to the technical practices though. The tools there supported the technical practices that were owned and driven by the people. And even with all of this good tooling, there was a big missing point on this because organizations missed the boat on the idea of a cross-functional team. When I say a cross-functional team, it was we have a little bit of what we need to deliver value. It's not a team of front-end developers working with a team of back-end developers with a team of testers. If that's what you think scaling is, you've got it completely wrong. They got it wrong before and you got it wrong now. They've missed the boat on this. It required a restructuring of what your teams look like, a restructuring of the mindset around collaborative work, around how we get feedback, around how we plan. And so the tools, some of these tools supported the Agile mindset, and some of them really supported something else. So thinking about this age of like when people would be around of, hey, here's a tool I could use this, we could do this. Virtual environments were virtually, but I'm ching. Those virtual environments in some places were there, but in the systems that I would work on from a sensitive nature, working for defense, homeland, intel, law enforcement, financial, you had to go to a terminal to work on this stuff. So like your tool set, sticky notes and cards, talking. But where are we now? I mean, the players in the industry, most of them are just not even there. I mean, version 1, Rally, I know there's people still work on some of those things, but I don't even get that question anymore. I was a big proponent of Trello. I still am. I use that, but that was gobbled up by that whole Atlassian suite. And nowadays, it's not so much what to choose, like what to do, because frankly, everyone's just using Asana or something else, like something rooted in traditional project management, because at the end of the day, that's what everybody wanted. It's not what to choose. It's how to deal with this particular installation of Jira. I used to tell a joke. There's the J word, by the way. I used to tell a joke because I have it somewhere on an old laptop. But there used to be jobs that you could get, 6-figure jobs in the DC area, writing JQL, writing different views to satisfy people's view of what was happening on the team. Imagine that. Someone says the good old days. I was like, I don't know if I'd want to do that. The thing is, around some of these tools, specifically Confluence and Jira, it was sold as a cheap alternative that you didn't have to pay so much. And let me be real, the only people who really like this tool, busybodies and system administrators. If I just rattled your cage, probably needed to be. Seriously. Slack now has shown up. This is like the system of record. It's a document repository where you're searching for like notes and things like that. I mean, basically it's real-time SharePoint. Ugh. There was a push. I mean, come COVID, from a tooling standpoint, it wasn't like, what are some tools to support like how we can move the needle? I mean, it was virtual meeting tools. Think about like Blue Jeans, Google Meet, Zoom, and don't even get me started on Teams. By the way, if you're fighting the Teams fight, I feel for you. I've actually turned down training engagements where people would know in the contract you have to use this particular version of Teams. And it's like, no, I'm not doing that. It's a disaster. And when you see like the buttons that immediately close Zoom and like you feel that you're being watched, it's more about taking attendance than actually collaborating. That's what meetings are now. It's a bummer. And a lot of times teams don't even have a choice, which is bad. Instead of actual like agile lifecycle management tools, right now it's literally just ticket shuffling and visibility. Back to that Jira thing. I use the word issue, ticket. That's all. That's what a lot of teams work on now. Instead of the choice between agile lifecycle management tools of like Rally or version 1, today's version of it is what collaborative board do you want to use? Do you do Miro, Lucid, Mural, Google Slides? Everybody's using one of these. And the crazy thing there is that I talked to a student once and they were more in the education space, the training space. They had come to me for some of that guidance. And they said they were forbidden to use one of the products due to a political relationship within their organization. They could use something else that was much worse to use, but they couldn't use the one that was the best fit for their use case because someone didn't like it or someone was related to something. It was crazy. A lot of these virtual tools and products that were out there, what they were trying to do was replicate those physical environments to kind of recapture that magic, anything that would support collaboration. But instead of collaboration, nowadays it's more about like time tracking. That's a bummer. I mean, it's just give me a view of every single dashboard so I can bark at this one engineer to close their ticket because I need this report to look right because I have to then sand it for this red, amber, green executive brief that's coming on up here later on. Folks, give me a break. It's all greens all the time, isn't it? That's what the tool is. There's like a rush to use some of these tools to the exclusion of people. And it's like, people want to put the tool in. Organizations like, if we get the tool configured right, we get the views set up right, then it will make us agile. It's a quote from literally, it's almost a direct quote from one of my clients. The tools were driving the work instead of the other way around. Remember, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Talk about which way that seesaw tips. Tools, all the time, tools. Before this, like, I'll admit, it was fun because new stuff was entering the market. You could try some things out. And like, there used to be like a race to try to get these tools in the organization. It wasn't like people would do sales calls and demos and give you licenses and, hey, I'll sit with you. And I really appreciate my different contacts at these different companies from years ago. If you're watching this, you know who you are. Thank you. Stuff wasn't like fully custom built. It was, how can this support your value delivery? Now the question is, hey, does it integrate with this legacy thing here? Or can I see it in this dashboard? From a training standpoint, it's like avatar based training. Like I had someone come to me to try to sell me. This is one of the tools that was out there. We can come up with this tool where you speak into a microphone and we capture your voice and you can pick a different avatar because it can pump out these training things quicker and to do our bad agile faster. And it's like, I'm not your market for that. There's other tools out there, and this may ruffle a couple feathers. People are trying to sell the AI agile coach. No disrespect. Come on. And what it was is, instead of paying this person, you can have this virtual coach where you can ask questions. And I had an interaction with somebody where they were telling me about a demo they received. And I'd love to just tell you this quick story. An organization, big player in this market, they said, someone came to us and they were pitching an agile coach, a virtual agile coach to us. I said, before you tell me what it was, I'm wondering if this is what the demo looked like. I said, let me paint the picture for you. They come to you in the pitch and they say, hey, wouldn't it be great if you had someone to answer the questions where teams are struggling with problems? Let's say, teams in our daily stand-up, you know I'm saying that. Teams in our stand-up, there's not the interaction. So what can I do with this? And you could ask this virtual coach. And what would happen is the virtual coach would give you not one, not two, but 3 recommendations. You know what those recommendations were? The first one was an article written a long time ago about here are the benefits of people actually talking. The next one was a reference to a blog post that a really important person in the community wrote. And if you wanted to try what was in either of those 2, that's good. But if either of those things failed, you could go back to the third option of what it would be to use the standard questions that were a part of the daily stand-up, which was, what are you doing yesterday? What are you doing today? And what's holding you up? The 3 questions. Yesterday I did this. Today I did this. No impediments. I say, you know what? And it would come back with that. And those are the options. And there's a lot of problems with what we just heard. And if you don't think any of that's a problem, you got one. We were joking about that because, just to tell you part of the punchline, those questions were never standard. They were taken out of the Scrum Guide and completely misinterpreted by a line out of XP, and then people just ran with it. So frustrating. And I wonder if this is what the demo would be. And this one executive looked at me and they said, Chris, that's the exact demo that we got. So if you're out there building that stuff, your model might just not know how to cook the chicken. Literally, this virtual AI coach is built on just improper principles, wrong practices, and an incorrect or incomplete understanding about what this stuff is. Buy cheap, get cheap. Do you think that coach is going to help you with things? That virtual coach? No. And by the way, this is not an AI rant. That's a whole nother episode probably. It's a tool that people are excited about. There are cases for it, but you want to know what? There's a lot of misuse, so you got to be careful on that. If you want to hear me rant on that stuff, let me know in the comments below. I'll tape another episode on that. And shout out to my friends who are in that space. I know you're excited about it. Remember what I said earlier about active server page technology? It's what you sound like sometimes. Perfectly honest. Right now, when it comes to software tools, people are not evaluating tools. They're not buying and trying things out. They're not getting licenses to try some things out. Instead, the fight is, how can I deal with the ones that I'm stuck with and that I can't get rid of? That's what tools are right now. And there are companies that shoved all in on these things. And when I say all in, their entire business model was around these software tools. And now they've had to repivot. They've had to find new customers, new problems to solve. The people who used to be excited about these different tools to help support this agile mindset, the old customers used to be the movers and shakers, people trying to impact change, the agilists that really wanted to move the needle. Now, you want to know who's interested, who the customers are? The compliance and report generating overhead people. That's who swipes the card now. It's like, man, that's a bummer. And it's just where we are now. If you've got a tool that solves a problem and you're making money on it, hey, good for you. Good for you. Is it trying to sell a mindset that a lot of people don't believe in? Might. I mean, everyone's got to eat, don't get me wrong. But there's a line. And does it fit with what makes me excited? What makes my friends excited? What makes my colleagues excited? Not always. Not always. So on tools, when people say, hey, is the business of Agile dead? Some of the biggest players, no longer even in the market. If they are, they've put their energy and time and resources and people somewhere else. And you're trying to find a new problem. And it might have been a good ride, but what the products are and who's buying them, that doesn't exactly show me the healthiest thing. Talk about being on life support. It's a bummer. It's a bummer when you think about just saying this stuff out loud. I loved when a new feature would come out where it's like, hey, we're really running into this problem or this kind of thing here, or this really kind of sucks. Boy, I really wish this could do this thing or solve this problem. Now it's, can I add another custom field to my ticket? Ugh. Sucks. Anyway, the vendors who wanted to sell these tools, these different ways to visualize, to collaborate, they needed to get these tools in front of the people who would buy them. And it's not even always the people who would use them, the people who actually would buy them. And what better place than a conference where all these people were in one place? And that's what I want to talk about next. Time is the most valuable thing, so thank you for sharing some of yours. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, follow, subscribe, and share. Thanks again.